Can you ever completely heal your nervous system? So the nervous system is like a sponge. And imagine when you were a child, that sponge was first being created. So it's even spongier, if that makes sense, than it is right now. And so it absorbs massively all the emotional, like conditioning, trauma, and everything you're used to. In fact, okay, because I talk about the subconscious a lot, I just want to give you guys a little bit of context around that. The subconscious mind was created in the ages primarily between 0 and 5, and then 5 to 18. And so what this means is that our entire idea and belief systems of how we truly live were created in that period of time. So our entire identity of ourselves, it's so fucked up, right? Because we're living for so long as adults and we keep thinking, oh, but I'm doing this and I'm doing that, I'm doing that. If we were to break it down, I can break down every single person's story into showing you how that's actually just a different idea of a repetition from your childhood, whether it's about a relationship, whether it's about how you choose money, whether it's about the jobs you choose, whether it's about how you're trying to prove yourself, whether it's about how you choose travel, whether it's about choosing coping mechanisms like alcohol, sex, drugs, etc., whether it's about, only attaching to animals or pets. It's like all of that is almost entirely determined in those ages or stages when we were really young, which is why, for example, Carl Jung created the concept of reparenting, because he said, unless we go back to that time of our lives and reparent ourselves for the things we didn't have but needed, to heal the wounds that we really had but no one really understood, then we're unconsciously going to keep projecting these into our lives and into our relationships. For me, that what that looked like was, I think I've talked about this many times, but really briefly, when I ended that relationship with that girl who for 6 years ended, and that was everything to me, it triggered my abandonment wounds massively. And so when my abandonment wounds came up, the first thing that I really wanted at that point was naturally to grab onto people who could soothe that abandonment, right? So I just grabbed onto relationships to women, trying to find women who would basically nurture me the way that I wished my mother nurtured me. Why? Because the end of that relationship reminded me of the complete abandonment I had. So I attracted women who are older, women who had children, women that had already set up their lives, even though what I wanted was a woman to create a life with, to get married to, and have children. And this was absolutely, they were not capable of any of this. And yet I convinced myself so much that even my friends were like, dude, this is not the best relationship for you. And I was like, no, love has no age and barriers and stuff. And sure, that's true, but I wasn't getting what I really wanted anyway. So I got into these relationships. I got into one, tried to prove that I was worthy of love, ultimately trying to attain that this person would commit to me, give up their own family lives, children. Why? Because I was still trying to get my mom to prove to me that I was loving and worthy, and that she would love me more than all my other siblings, that she would choose me, not send me away, etc. But that never happened. Relationship number 1 ended. You won't believe it. There were 5 relationships in a row over a span of 3 years that were exactly the same. And each time I tried to prove myself more. And so each time I attracted an even harder situation, until ultimately I attracted a woman who was older, had kids, and was married. And I was trying to prove myself even more, to say, ultimately, I hope you will choose me over your life, your family, everything that you're in, because then finally I'll feel like, okay, I am worthy of love. But that's because my massive abandonment wound in my subconscious was constantly dictating it. In my conscious mind, I was like, no, this is not true, because I've moved to a different place. I'm finding a different person. It was so crazy how I literally, when that last relationship really rocked me on my ass so hard, I finally sat and sat with myself to say, holy shit, there is some kind of fucking pattern here, and where is it coming from? And that's when I actually, for most of the people on the gauntlet, that I locked myself up actually for 3.5 months, because I knew if I connected with another woman, the state that I was in, I was for sure going to get into a similar pattern. And I refused to let that happen to me at that point. So I literally locked myself up 3.5 months, and I dove so deep into reparenting and understanding what it was all about. And that's how I was able to process and release so much of my abandonment trauma and my healing. Now, that's the nervous system. It holds on to trauma as an attachment the same way that the nervous system holds on to joyful memories as an attachment, which is why when you look at a puppy or a baby or an animal, you feel so much elation. Your vibration goes up. You feel so much more connected, because your nervous system feels in both ways. But it's not only in the way we think, which is the positive side. A lot of the trauma and everything is also in there. So we have to go back to healing that trauma and releasing what's attached to the nervous system so that we can actually feel more regulated, grounded, composed, and we can now connect and show up in a way that's truly authentic and that's not completely and always traumatized. And that requires a lot of like work and practice of healing those wounds and also, connecting with ourselves. Now, one thing I will say though is that just locking myself up for 3 months was not going to do it, because as soon as I open the door, I'm going to go and find something else like that. It's what you do in that period of time that really counts. That's what's the key thing about it. And you don't have to lock yourself up. Most people don't have access to have to do that because of work, children, etc. But you have to find your own way.
Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.